Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's KETIV Autodesk Virtual Academy session. I'm Nigel Mbayek. Probably seen me a couple times here before. Welcome to those of you who are new. Today, I'll be joined by Mike Carlson, who's project manager here at KETIV. Hi, Mike. And also we have Allan. He's going to be giving us the scoop on what's new in Autodesk Vault 2017. If you have any questions at all during this broadcast, feel free to type them into the questions bar that you have in your GoToWebinar panel. And we'll make sure to cover those either during the session or we'll make sure to cover them all at the end. So without further ado, Allan, feel free to take over.
Thanks very much. Welcome, everyone. So we'll switch over to our presentation here. This has been in the wild now for a few weeks, the Vault 2017 release. And I wanted to go through and highlight a few of the new features, enhancements we've got this year. And what they can do to further a little bit of your productivity and data management needs. So a few main themes for 2017. The main one and the biggest project we undertook this year was a more robust security model. So we'll dive into that in a little bit more detail, but essentially we've looked at merging together some of our object and state-based securities to give you a more sensible and complete security model. We've made some licensing changes, so I'll provide some information on what's happened on the licensing side of things. For most of you on the call, this is not going to be a significant change to the way you work today. Of course, some usability enhancements. We're still working through our ideas site, trying to pick off the most frequently requested enhancements. So we've seen some changes this year to copy design, the ability to save as, insert into CAD, as well as some new integration capabilities. And finally, some more changes to administration to make the install process run a little bit more smoothly, and also enhance security around the passwords for the application users on the server. So let's jump into security. So for those of you who may not be aware, in Vault Professional and Vault Workgroup we have historically had a number of security gates. So first of all, of course, is the user role. So what permissions you have on objects inside the Vault based on your login permissions. Once we're logged into Vault, then we have another two security layers. One of these is objects. Typically an access control list, a list of users who are able to modify a file or an item or a folder. And that controls access into those. The next layer we then have is the state-based security. So this is your ability to view a file when it's in release state versus work in progress versus in review. So previously these two securities were at odds. Essentially the last security applied was the winner. So this made it difficult for multiple divisions or groups inside the same company sharing the same vault. Because oftentimes you would not have permissions to a folder, but you would perhaps have permissions to a file in a specific state. So this caused some issues for customers, lots of workarounds in terms of creating new life cycles, new state-based securities for each division inside a company or each site. But now we're taking on a gated model. So we will take into consideration what your role is, what the current object state-based security is, and actually come up with a final effective permission for the user. So much more flexible and simple approach to managing your security. Some of the other things we've done to enhance the interaction with security is a new permission grid. So previously we had some checkboxes that you would click off on, but now we've implemented a common grid across all the dialogues for object and state-based securities. And we've also added a new effective access view. So this is a view on an object or a folder, for example, where we can go in, select a user, and have a look at exactly what that user is able to do with the file, the item, or the folder. We've also added some controls around propagating security, so rolling down new security changes to the folders and files contained within. And for those of you who are using lifecycle transitions, we have enabled a user who has permission in 2 states to automatically transition between those 2 states. This is optional. We don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it's a nice, simple way to work through the configuration of your lifecycle schemes. Right. So I've got a quick video here I'm going to run for you guys to have a look at how the new security interface and how it's applied. So we'll go into the administration dialog here, and we'll have a look at, first of all, how to turn on this new security model. For those of you who are migrating, you will need to turn this on. It's not on by default because we don't want to upset any of your securities. You'll see on the left-hand side, I have a definition security, and I've got combined object-based security there. You'll see our grid, so we've set up some permissions for everyone in a particular state for work in progress. We can set up rules for files inside of a folder with that lifecycle. We can also set up rules for files attached to items that have that lifecycle. So you'll see in released here, everyone is allowed to read but is denied explicitly modify and delete permissions. So let's have a look at how this works inside of the folder here. We've got 2 subdirectories with our padlock here. And if we go and look at the security tab here, this is our access control list. So on the folder, we've added some users. We can also add groups in here, of course. And we've permitted or denied some permissions to all the files inside this folder. So we've made this read-only for a number of people here outside of the administrator. We go to Project 2, and we'll have a quick look at the details on this folder. We've got some security here. You'll see there's no access control list at the moment. So I'm going to add an object-based security by adding the group in and making it read. So you'll see immediately as I add the read-only permission, we get padlocks against all the files, even for the current user. And they get even a little padlock on the folder. Now I'm going to go down to a file contained within that first folder, that padlock folder there. And you can see with the state-based security, I should have full access. So I'm allowed to modify, delete, and read. But you'll see if I go and select a specific user in there, in this case Sally Supervisor, she is only allowed read permissions. She's inherited that from the folder. I'm going to go and select an assembly in the second folder here. We'll right-click into the details. Again, we'll go and check the security. Everyone should be allowed. But when we go into the effective access, we'll again select Sally Supervisor. You see she's denied modify and delete. If we look at the object-based security, that's the allow for read-only. And when we go and look at the state-based security, she should effectively have access to all these files. So you can see there we're actually providing a gated a security model where it takes into account your access control list or your object security as well as the lifecycle state securities. Going through and adding a couple more folks in there, you'll see now that have read-write access. And selecting now to review our effective permissions. There we go. We've got Sally in. You can see now Sally has denied all access to this folder. Okay, and that's because of the object-based security. From a state-based security perspective, she has full access, but we combined it with the folder permissions to deny her completely. And that's an important little point there as well. If you don't explicitly allow someone permission in this new security model, we block them out altogether. Okay. So that's probably our biggest change for 2017. It's a small change, but it's a big time saver, and it's a much simpler, more common sense approach to the security of the files inside of Vault. Okay. Another change here, as I mentioned before, this is probably not going to affect too many people on the call, but essentially we've changed our licensing to bring it to the client side. And this brings us more in line now with the other Autodesk products. So many of you will be aware that when we log into Vault historically, the licensing is actually distributed from the server that we log into. So what that means is we have a little gateway, or we have an extra step in getting the license. It makes it hard to track sometimes who has the license, what machine they're on consuming the license, and getting some accurate numbers around usage. But with this change to 2017, we're able to put all the licensing on the client, so we talk directly to a licensing server. This is going to enable some different distribution and install models for Vault, but at the moment we're still using a multi-user subscription type model, which means we have a floating license that users are able to pull from the license server. Okay, so it supports the existing model. We can still run previous versions of Vault against the ADMS 2017 with this licensing. We can still run Vault Office Thin Client, and all the licensed products. So not a huge change yet, but you'll see in the future more flexible ways of adding Vault licenses to your company or your environment as users come and go. Okay. We do have some deployment options in terms of configuring, so we make sure we roll out with a server model pointing to the correct license, similar to what you do with your other Autodesk products. And we do have some licensing information inside of the Vault Explorer, so a user can go in and see what sort of license they have and where it's being consumed. Okay. In addition to this, we still support the token flex and multi-user subscription now, in addition to the perpetual licensing. So if you guys have any more questions about licensing options that you'd like to explore, please speak to KETIV about this, and they'll help you figure out, if you do want to move to a different licensing model, what's the best one for you. Okay. So usability. Again, as I mentioned at the start here, real focus on ideastation and customer feedback to try and pick off some of the really hot items that the users would like to see in the product. So a number of enhanced workflows and new capabilities came out of this. A big one for us was the copy design folder view. Very heavily requested. One of the big changes we made to copy design in the newer releases was to put in a tree view to allow you to copy folders between, or copy files between folders. And we did away with the find and replace path. So that was not very popular. So that's been added back in 2017. And we'll have a quick look at the various methods we have here. So another short video here. You'll see we're going to go in and grab an assembly to copy. Grab the padlock again. So in the new copy design window, you'll see a grid with all the thumbnails. We've got all the reference files loaded into the window. And I'm first of all going to use the copy to method. So this one was already available in 2016. You'll see here I'm going to select I'm going to create a new project folder on the fly. See, it's got a little new folder icon next to it. And I've created a new file with a new name in that new folder location. If I go over to the tree view now, on the right-hand side in my panels, you see I can actually grab a bunch of files and drag and drop them into that folder. So again, something we can do in 2016. It sets the files to copy, and we see them in the new location. What we've done in 2017, though, is we've added this new list view. So expanding that out, you can see the current path in Vault. And when we've set something to copy, we can also see the destination path. So I'm going to go through and select a number of files. We're going to copy them. By default, they get copied to the same location that they're currently living in. But now, I'm going to do a really quick find and replace to change the path. So anywhere we see padlock, I'm going to change this to Project 101. So as you saw before, drag and drop is pretty quick and simple in terms of moving files between folders. But if you have a cascaded folder structure or some complexity in naming, that find replace is really useful in just doing a quick swap out. So again, probably one of the most requested features that we removed for 2016. So back in 2017 now. Another enhancement in support of Inventor is some modifications to the Multi-CAD support, AnyCAD. So Inventor now supports us linking to native third-party files like a CATIA, Creo, or SolidWorks file. We can use them as reference files inside of Inventor, and by adding them through the Inventor assembly, we can get these files into Vault and have them managed as a read-only dependent of the Inventor model. So in 2016 we introduced this, but we had some limitations around the item creation, the bill of materials creation, where we could not link these files directly to an item. They were actually seen as virtual components. So in 2017 we've extended this now, and we can link the files directly to the item, so we get a much clearer view of what the item relates to and where the item's being used. Another nice one here, based on user feedback, is Place into CAD. So this is available in in Professional and Workgroup. It is a little app that you can download from the App Store. It's on our App Store now for Vault 2017. If you haven't been to the App Store, please go and check this out. There's a few really nice productivity and enhancement tools up there that sit on top of Vault. But essentially this came about because we have spent the last few years enhancing the open and place dialogues inside of Inventor to make these as usable as possible. But what we found was customers were still preferring to do searching and select files directly from the Vault Explorer interface. So with that in mind, we made some changes to Open from Vault Explorer so that it was downloading latest files and behaving essentially the same way as the Open from Inventor command. But we still didn't have a really strong Place from Vault Explorer story. So this is what Place into CAD is. We'll have a look at a quick video of this again in a minute. But essentially now we start Inventor model, assembly, go back to Vault Explorer, find the file or files we're looking for, and we can right-click and say Place into CAD. That will download the files and drop them into the window, placing them into the assembly. So streamlining workflows, getting rid of some of this dialogue, and actually working with the way customers work. So we'll have a quick look at this. You'll see I'm in an assembly here inside of Inventor. I'll click across to my Vault Explorer, and up here we'll do a quick search. Alright, we've got our combo assembly here. I'm going to right click and you'll see I've got this Insert to CAD option. So that downloads the file into my working folder, so we're not going to have any missing references. And it switches back to the window so I can click and place that inside the Inventor assembly. So this will work for assemblies and part files, but we only do one component at a time, or one file at a time. So we can be moving back in between our search results in the Inventor window, or just clicking one at a time as we need them, having them sit side by side. So I think that's a little bit of the Place into CAD. Another enhancement over previous years is the revision rollback. So obviously this was another hotly requested feature for a long time, to be able to roll back files when we change the revision accidentally, or we have an ECO rejected, for example. This was introduced in 2016. However, it was a little laborious because we would have to do one file at a time in terms of the rollback, and we would have to do these in a specific order. So it left itself open to some user error if you didn't have a tight process for rolling these back. So now we can actually select multiple files, hit the rollback, and have them go back to the previous state in the previous revision, and purge out any any versions which have been created since the last release. So a real quick example of this one here. go and use the padlock example again. You'll see I've got a file released here at D. I'm going to change its state, and we'll just include the dependency in terms of the models. And I'm going to select just the ones that I'm interested in making a change on. So you'll see here we have a number of files now which are all going to be changed as part of this operation back to work in progress. So this is going to bump our revision. It's going to create a new version of the file for us now to go and edit and make changes. You can see there that's bumped to revision E for the padlock. Right. Now, oftentimes this will be part of a change order or some other action which is subject to approval. And in all likelihood, we could get into a situation where that's rejected, and then we'll need to basically wind back the revision to the previous D and try to get rid of these new files so we don't have a confusing story around what the latest revision is, what the latest effective revision is. So you'll see here I've found all the files that were part of that change action, and I can hit the rollback lifecycle state. It'll come up and give me a message indicating what's going to happen to each file selected as part of the process. It's going to go back to a release state, and it's going to go back to the previous revision. So you can see there I've selected to OK those changes. I'm now back at the previous revision for all the files, all back and released. Okay. Another one, which is an enhancement to data standard. Again, a separate little install to your standard out-of-the-box Vault implementation. We've added the ability to save copy as. So again, lots of requests to be able to manage files in different formats in Vault. And this is part of an ongoing project. We're certainly doing other work around viewables, PDFs, and things like that. But for 2017, through Data Standard, we can do a save copy as and select one of these formats to save that file directly into Vault. So be it a 2D PDF or DXF, or for 3D models, we can have a step file. So a nice simple way to have some standard formats saved into Vault directly. Okay. Another one, in collaboration with the Factory Design Suite team, is a new integration to work with their asset management tools. So for 2017, those in Factory Design Suite now will be able to publish assets directly into Vault. They'll be able to then consume those assets through the library, which is now stored in Vault, and do some layout management. So actually understand where instances of their assets, of their equipment, are being used and consumed. We have instance level properties, and we can do some where used analysis to understand which version of the asset is being used where, along which lines, which factories, for example. Okay, so this direct factory access works within the existing factory workflows. So you'll see here on the asset browser in this image here, includes a bunch of existing libraries on the local or shared network, and you'll see now there's a Vault asset option there. The UI has been modified to add in the new asset tab, which shows information around the usage and what machinery or components are being used on a specific line or site. So much deeper integration with the Factory Design Suite for anyone who's currently using that. Okay. So the purpose here, store the entire factory data model, manage the instance information, revise the assets directly involved with a lot more security and control around who's modifying assets and who's using assets from a factory perspective. And last but certainly not least are our administrative enhancements. So SQL and Security, we're actually encrypting some of these service level accounts now, so the passwords aren't exposed, getting much more compliant with enterprise security standards. And during our pre-checks, we also now automatically resolve some of the error cases that we see. So obviously during pre-checks we're offering advice about how to solve an issue, and in 2017 for several error conditions we now will offer to fix the issue and rerun the scan for you, so you don't have to go and do a manual step there and fixing up the install requirements. That's they're the main headlines for 2017. So we'll open up the lines, I think, guys, and see if anyone has any questions.
Great. Thanks, Allan, again. It's a great presentation. It's awesome seeing the new stuff that rolls out every year. So, like I said earlier, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them out in the side panel, and we'll definitely get them covered right now. So, a couple people, including Chris, asked, well, he missed the start of this particular AVA, and then he asked whether or not all of these things were applicable to Vault Basic versus like Workgroup and Professional.
This year, almost everything I've shown is a Vault Professional and a Workgroup capability.
For sure.
I think the other one that Fred was asking was with the permissions on the folder levels. Obviously, you put read-only permissions or edit capability. A person can search and find the data inside there, based on that permission. But if you deny them access at the folder, can they get to the file through searching?
No longer. That was previously the case. If you, because we had a conflict in permissions with the object and the security-based permissions, you could potentially see a file in a restricted folder. But we will no longer do that.
Good. Cool. So that covers that one. And Mike, hey, that's a pretty popular name. Mike asked about the system requirements for 2017 and whether or not they're any different for some of the previous versions.
Between 2016 and 2017, there's been very few changes. I'd encourage everyone to go to the Autodesk website for the latest information around the supported environments. But typically, 2012 SQL and OS for the server side, which is usually the big change, obviously, from year to year. And we're supporting most of the common client-side operating systems now.
Yep, for sure. And then along those same lines, if you are upgrading to 2017, this is for everybody out there, upgrading 2017, if you haven't already, you're going to want to update your network license manager on your server end that's handing out licensing to everybody. Some of these 2017 softwares aren't be able to read on version 11.12, which is the one that was previously out. A couple months ago, they released 11.13, and that's completely compatible with all of the new license files. Might run into some issues if you don't do that.
There's a question from Mark asking, place into CAD, the functions of place into CAD and save as copy are separate add-ins, or are they separate add-ins, or are they included with the subscription? And
they're available for you under your subscription. There's no additional cost to those, but they are additional installations.
Right. Yeah.
So another, this is Mark Patterson this time. Changing security permissions can only be done one folder at a time, or can multiple folders be changed at once?
Yeah, we'll cascade the permissions down. So if you apply securities at a higher level for a folder, that will cascade down to all the subfolders.
Okay. I think that's it for now. And anyone have any last-minute questions, feel free to type them in really quick. If you do have other questions that you think about after this session is over, feel free to type them into the survey, and we'll touch base with you afterwards, make sure that gets all covered. So I think that's it for the Q&A. If you can just go to the next slide, Allan. So next week we have bill of materials configuration in Inventor, and that'll be done by Jorge Fernandez, who's one of the application engineers here at KETIV. So definitely look forward to that. Mark that on your calendars. Same time every week, 10 o'clock on Thursdays. Oh, we just got a last-minute question from Mark. He came in late. Where will a recording be located? So as we do every week, all of these recordings are placed on our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/KETIV Technologies. You can find all of them there. We'll probably have this one up sometime later this afternoon or tomorrow. And then we'll also post those videos. We'll link them onto all of our social media websites, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. You can find them all there as well. as well as all of our other past AVAs and among other cool things such as that. Also, we do have a new training catalog that we're starting to roll out. Part of that training catalog happens to be some Vault administrative tools. So if you do have any questions in regards to receiving that or any information you want on the training catalog, feel free to put that in the survey at the end, and we'll definitely get back to you. So again, I'd like to thank you, Allan, for doing the presentation for us. Thanks again. Allan's done a couple of these things for us, and it's been great every time. Mike, thanks again for sitting with us. Again, I'm Nigel Mbayek, and in the wise words of the late, great Prince, party like it's 1999. See you next week, guys.